Elul, the final month of the Jewish year, serves as a period of introspection and as an on-ramp into the high holidays of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Elul Unbound is Judaism Unbound's annual observance of this month. Each week of Elul, we release episodes of Judaism Unbound that explore the month's themes and how we can creatively experiment with this time period to make it as meaningful and liberatory as possible. You can register to participate in Elul Unbound yourself. Join us for Elul Shabbat gatherings throughout this month, engage with Elul-related writing, video, audio, and so much more via our bi-weekly Elul Unbound email list, and connect with other Judaism Unbounders committed to making the most of this time period by heading to judaismunbound.com/ELUL2025. That's judaismunbound.com/Elul2025. Also, if you've been looking for an Intro to Judaism class that you can access anywhere in the world, consider signing up for Judaism Inbound. Our Judaism Unbound Intro to Judaism class fit for folks looking to convert, folks who have been Jewish their whole lives and just want to learn more, or people who aren't Jewish at all and just want to learn about Judaism. Learn more at judaismunbound.com/classes. Financial aid, as always, is available. This is Judaism Unbound, episode 501, Elul 2025, Elul. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Lex Rofberg.
And I'm Wendie Bernstein-Lash.
And we're here today with a bittersweet episode. Largely sweet. I mean, we just last week celebrated our 500th episode. It was such an incredible experience to reflect back with Dan and Miriam and think about these incredible almost 10 years that we've shared as a show. And this week, we're kicking off our next century of episodes, which is very fun. And we're doing so with Wendie Bernstein-Lash, who is one of our very frequent flyers on Judaism Unbound. She's appeared in almost 36 of our episodes over the course of time because she is shepherd of this Elul initiative we do every year, where we soak into the spirit of introspection, inner seeking that can precede the holidays of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And so Wendie is back with us, and she is here for our 4th of 4 episodes where we're exploring different themes of the month of Elul, of this on-ramp month into the high holidays. And this week, we came up with the theme that Wendie's going to take us into. It's a little bit of a play on words, which we are firmly in support of at Judaism Unbound. Last week, we talked about Shemitah, and that was a little bit of an eco-related episode related to our relationship to the earth. So you might call that Ecolul. But this week, we've got Echolul, E-C-H-O. Wendie, what do we mean?
So I was thinking about what is an echo? And, calling out in a cave or on a mountaintop, and you get back what you sent out, but it's not exactly the same. It's a little quieter. You know it's based on the original, and yet it's not really transformed. It's just not exactly the same. And so here we are, Echolul, recognizing that there are these echoes that happen, that we hit things in the spiritual or the calendar, the Jewish calendar, over and over again. We read the cycle of the Torah. We have Elul every year. We have high holidays every year. And so it's not the same as last year, and yet it is the same time. And so this sense of the beauty of the Jewish calendar and the flow and cycles, and also this spiral effect. And I think that's where has a lot of juice, is like we return to something, it's not exactly the same. So what's new about it? What's the echo and what's the new? What's the old and what's being renewed? That's where I'm thinking. How about you, Lex?
I really love that. Echo and almost all sound words get me really revved up because, and many people know this, but not everybody who listens to our podcast. I'm the one who does the editing. And so I'm like obsessed with sound and get to geek out about very specific sound related things. And so an echo is really interesting because when I'm editing our podcast, on some level, an echo could be a mistake. So when we're editing our podcast, the first part of the process is I get everybody's track. So let's say it's me, Dan, and a guest. Let's say Wendie was the guest. So we would have Dan's track, my track, and the guest track. We actually have a couple other extraneous things, but for purposes of our conversation, what matters is that each person has their own track. And what we have to do at the beginning is I have to line them all up. And when I do that, I have to like drag the tracks over. And so I'm doing my best to get them lined up. And when it's close but not quite right, what you get is an echo. What you get is an echo. Like you get this. I'm literally just making what it is like. There's something about it that is very hard to hear. Like our ears don't like it when things are close to being aligned, but not quite. But also when there's a certain level of distance that they're close to being aligned, but not quite, it actually creates this kind of reverberation. Reverb is a technical term. It creates this like sound effect almost of importance and grandeur. And so echo, on the one hand, it can be like a diminishment, an error, a repetition that is not desired, right? On the other hand, it can be a magnifier. And so echo is really interesting as a spiritual tool because on the one hand, I love it. I think we need echoes. We need to have, a spiritual teaching or message in one moment and then an echo of it later. We actually need that in order to reinforce. We've talked in the past about how, on the one hand, the month of Tishrei that we're going to start soon, it's the new year, but it's also, according to the Bible, the 7th month. And so if you think of the 12-month year as 2 6-month periods, it's like the first 6-month period and then the echo 6-month period. Now, we've made that day, Rosh Hashanah, our first month, quote unquote, even though the Bible calls it the 7th month. But we've retained this notion that it's halfway through the year and the beginning of the year, which feels like an echo to me. We're bringing something back, but with new character. We're relating to the first month of the year, even as we're in the 7th. And then when we get to the first month, which is the month that Passover's in, we're calling back to the 7th. It's very much an echo. And there's a way in which there still is sometimes for me that dissonance that isn't good. There's like, an echo needs to be careful. It needs to be like, oh, you shout into the cave and then there's the echo. The echo's a little quieter. It comes back to you. It feels like you're in a conversation. It's not louder than the thing that started. And sometimes I feel like it needs to be. Sometimes I feel like we need a crescendo and not an echo. We need to grow from a spiritual message to have it multiply and not diminish. An echo implies it's getting smaller if we're shouting in the cave. So I'm curious how that all lands on you, Wendie.
I'm thinking about Elul itself as the echo of the year, right? So we're doing this reflective look back in order to prepare for what's coming, the new year and the high holy days. So we're echoing back. And some people go back and look at their journals, but we're viewing how we have been in the past year. And we're also, I don't know, is there such a term for like the pre-echo? It's like, how does that fit into the fact that we're doing all this work so that we can land somewhere and be prepared? It is that on-ramp, off-ramp idea. There's got to be a term for like maybe it's the shofar. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking about how it's a little of both. It's the quiet lead up to the big, and it's the quiet ending of the fullness of the last year.
Totally. The shofar piece is interesting. I definitely think that when shofar is blown in a space that has a slight echo, if it's too harsh, it might be tough. But in a room that has a slight echo, there's really a power to that. There's actually discussions in halakha about like, if you hear not the actual shofar blast, but the echo, have you heard it? Because like the commandment is to hear it, right? I think that's like a non-trivial question. I do love the echo. There's also rules, like you're supposed to hear, and many communities do it differently, and we love when communities are experimental and great. Traditionally, you hear one shofar, and it sort of rings out. And I think part of why is that it sort of has its sound, and then at the close of it, there is that like ringing out. If you have multiple shofars, you are less likely to hear that for each separate shofar. You hear it for the last one. But it's harder to hold the ringing out at the end if there's still another sound going. And so you get the shofar blast, but then you also get that slowly and then completely diminished silence. Like you get the journey from the blast into the full silence of the room that I think actually is the point. This Chef of Gold teaches that like the reason we chant any melody that we chant is for the silence directly after the chant. It's like a practice to be able to then notice the silence, to notice the natural sounds in whatever space we're in. It tunes us into the space, which we can only notice if we make a bunch of noise and then stop. And so an echo, there is a way in which there's almost an inherent spirituality to it. Like you're automatically giving something the room to re-resonate, which is very powerful. And Jewishly, honestly, I don't know if we actually do it very well. It's kind of comical to me that there's a custom of like repeating the entire 19 blessings of the weekday liturgy or 7 on Shabbat. It's like the way to have that reverberate, which I think is the goal, would be to actually like sit for a second. Sometimes the best thing I can do in our audio when I'm editing is if somebody's speaking very quickly and takes a very slight pause between a really profound thing they said and the next thing, often I add like 3/4 of a second of pause because that makes it actually sink in and adds gravitas in a way that it can't soak in if you've just jumped to the next thing. And I think Jewishly, we're so into words. We're so into like a million prayers in a short time. The High Holiday Liturgy is the best example of this. You have to get an entire book called a Machzor for 10 days of liturgy. Like, and the Reform movement it's 2 books now. There's one for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur separately. Like, that's so many words. We should breathe a little. And the echo, on the one hand, you could say, well, it's the continuation of noise, Lex. It's not like if you're shouting the cave and there's an echo, that's ongoing noise. I don't think so. It's a sign that you haven't kept saying things, because if you're going a mile a minute, you can't hear the echo of the thing that was at the beginning of your sentence.
Well, I feel like if I had to give myself a middle name, it would be contemplative. And so you're speaking to me. I mean, I lead a contemplative chanting service. And when I say to people, it's like, we're going to chant and then we're going to sit in the silence between, because it activates us and we get a chance to notice what gets activated. Or we do the Shema one word at a time with space in between. And what is the Shema? But it's asking us to listen, to hear. I think it's there in Judaism, but I think it's a bit countercultural. There are enough contemplative oriented Jews that there's many more contemplative practices. And in the class that I have been teaching for the Yeshiva, we talked about a lot of those contemplative practices. So maybe I can pop a few into the emails that are going out, because this is it feels very Jewish to me, but it's not necessarily the way that most Jews engage with their Jewish practice.
Yeah. I'm flashing back to a podcast episode we had with Jay Michelson. But we ended up having the phrase echo chambers in the title. It was in the midst of our conversations about Israel-Palestine, and we ended up talking about echo chambers. And I always have a funny reaction when people talk about echo chambers, because I like some echo chambers. Like it's used as an automatically negative term, right? It tends to mean like people are only hanging out with other folks who share their political ideology, and they're sheltered from the rest of the world that thinks differently, and they're not only sheltered, but they're like actively hostile to anybody outside of their echo chamber. Like on the one hand, yeah, there's truth to that. And I try very hard in my own life to have real relationships with people who differ from me. And we need echo chambers. We need places where, to get back to like the sound metaphors, where we can vocalize a sound and others in the space actually re-vocalize it in certain ways, that the sound bounces and it comes back to us. Like being in the cave and shouting, echo, echo, echo. Like it's fun to do, because turns out we actually it's cute and funny when we hear our own voice back to us in that cave. And it's more than just cute and funny to be able to share space with other people who are sharing struggles that you're sharing, who have identity characteristics similar to you. I mean, Jews, we need spaces with other Jews. I've spent lots of time talking about how I think the vast majority of Jewish spaces are strongest when they also contain non-Jews. And it's not that I'm opposed to spaces where there's many Jews there sharing things across their Jewish identities. Like that's healthy and good. And it is an echo chamber, right? Like we somehow segment that off in our heads like, oh, that's not an echo chamber because echo chambers are bad. And when we say echo chamber, we mean, certain people with certain political viewpoints only ever hanging out with those folks. But an echo, it serves a spiritual purpose. It serves a pastoral purpose that, oh, there's somebody who shares what I'm feeling right now. It's not just me. I've vocalized that. And then there's that echo from somebody else who says, I affirm that. I hear you. I believe that. Like that's an echo. And so I think there's power to it. And echo chambers have problems. Like we know this. I'm saying all of this because that's so self-evident that I don't feel like society needs to hear that as much. I feel like we hear that in like every other sermon in every other synagogue. And so I'm interested in noticing the difference between how we associate echoes, which I think for a lot of people, like, oh yeah, that's like a spiritually minded word in many ways, and echo chambers, which somehow become very bad.
Yeah, I think that, noticing that something like an echo can take us down a spiral of not noticing and being only with people who share our opinions. And an echo can also be a way to listen. I think about the Jewish practice of not studying alone. So you're only with your own thoughts, Hevruta. And it's actually kind of, I feel like these podcasts are like being in Hevruta. You say something and it sparks something in me, and I say something and it sparks something in you. Our Zoom gatherings, the same way, we're listening to one another. That's the positive of the echo. But if we're all saying the same thing and just reinforcing the same thing, that's the negative of the echo.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of how some songs flow. There's particular songs, it's not every song, but like often you'll have a verse, a refrain once or twice, and then towards the end you'll have it again, but a little thing about the refrain will change. I'm thinking of a song I love by Vertical Horizon. It's called Everything You Want. The song is like a guy saying like, she's everything you want, she's everything you need, she's everything, like he says that over and over again. You hear that refrain, she's everything you want, she's everything you need, and it's a few times, and then at the end of the song it turns into I'm everything you want, I'm everything you need, I'm everything, like it shifts just the pronoun usage while the rest of the chorus stays the same. To me, that's a successful echo. Like that's a successful modality of repetition, but with a little tweak of change. That's something that will stick with us. There's many songs like this. Here's one, Cats in the Cradle. You start with, when you coming home, Dad, I don't know when, but we'll get together then. It's this song about a father-son relationship. And for the first bunch of verses, you're hearing it from the vantage point of, when's Dad gonna come home? But then it switches to, when you coming home, son, I don't know when, but we'll get together then. And it shows that he's grown old enough. Like, that's a beautiful thing to do in a song, to have the same exact words, but one little tweak. I think we need more echoes like that. We're really interested Jewishly in doing the same words over and over, having the same liturgy every day, having the same liturgy every Shabbat. Every once in a while, there's something that we tweak a little bit to mark that it's a holiday. We add a little thing into the Amidah. I often love those moments because it's sort of a forced consciousness. It's like a forced consciousness and conscientiousness. It takes you out of the autopilot, for those of us who are familiar with liturgy, and puts you in, okay, yeah, I'm still saying words that I say every week, or even if you don't go to services all the time, that I've said many times, but there's something a little different about them. On high holidays, for example, in the Kaddishes, in the little transitions between services, you say, Le'ela u'le'ela mikol birchata. You say this one word twice. It's a subtle shift, and I think it's only there to like sort of remind you we're doing something a little different from Kaddishes the rest of the year. Because that word, I mean, it just means elevated. It's like elevated and elevated are you, God, above all our words and prayers. Like, you don't need that extra word, but it's signifying through its extraness, we're tweaking things a little. It's like you've changed the chorus of the song a slight bit to add more meaning.
Well, I want to put in a plug for those of us that don't like to do the same thing over and over again, because that's me. And
Yeah.
so I'm fortunate since I lead services once a month, I change it up and I put together a new little
Shkoyach.
siddur every month because it's energizing and yet it has the same qualities, it has the same structure of the prayer service. And I noticed this as a meditator too, that some people like to do the same, a lot of people like to do the same meditation over and over again. I like to change it up. And so I'm getting to the same place, but I'm getting there in a way that is new and fresh.
That's gorgeous. And that's the perfect note to end on. I mean, this is our final Elul episode of this year. Next year in Elul, Wendie, we'll have another
Yes.
version of this. Little Passover shout out there. But that spirit you just brought is so deeply part of what we do. I mean, I did just talk about how I find value in repetition with a small amount of tweaking. In my dream world, I do the same thing you do. I host services in my backyard and I make a pray book every time. I force myself to keep it on a maximum of 2 pieces of paper, but I make it every time. And there are things that, I copy paste from the last time I did it, but most of it is new. And I pick new melodies and I find new sidebars to bring in because that's what Judaism Unbound people often are drawn to. We are kind of variety people. I flashed to an episode we had with Shai Held where he said, I'm a low voltage Jew. I like to have sort of a consistent charge in an electrical sense of low voltage as opposed to like here and there high voltage. I'm a high voltage. I don't want to speak for all of our listeners, but I think a lot of us are more high voltage and we're looking not necessarily to have like a constant, always Jewish meaning going on in our lives, praying 3 times a day. We're looking for intensified experiences that are meaningful and different and where we actually soak into that changedness. And Elul Unbound, that's something we try to do. It started as every day of the month, we're going to bring in something new as an alternative to the idea that what one does in Elul is every day says the same psalm, Psalm 27, and every day hears the same shofar. No, we're going to have a different wake-up call that's a random sound. Not random, but like an interesting sound every day. We're going to have, instead of Psalm 27, a different piece of text or liturgy or video or audio every day. That's really what we're striving for. And so I love closing on a passionate love letter to variety, to Jewish change, to Jewish difference, to not only Jewish consistency and, dare I say, continuity, but discontinuity. It's special and rad, and a lot of us, it's why we are part of this at all. The fact that we get to bring that newness, that changedness to this tradition that is so ancient is very powerful. So we'll close on that note, and thank you to all of you who have wandered with us, even if it was just this episode today and you didn't hear the previous ones. Dayenu, that's enough, that's wonderful. If you want to listen to more, you're allowed to. You totally can. You can go back and listen. But we hope this has been a meaningful companion to your on-ramp month into the high holidays. We hope that as you enter Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, you have one nugget. It doesn't have to be 7 or 11 nuggets, but one something that soaks into you and inflects your experience of these 10 meaningful days. Let us know. Let us know what was meaningful about this month for you. Send us a note at elul, E-L-U-L, at judaismunbound.com. We hope that we'll see you at our final Zoom gathering, which is tonight as this episode is released. You can sign up for it at judaismunbound.com/ELUL. And we hope that you'll continue on with this podcast into its future, beyond Elul and into next year. There's going to be some amazing episodes diving into Jewish music, which I'm really, really excited about, that will begin in the very near future. So stay tuned for that. Be in touch always. And with that, this has been Judaism Unbound.